Good morning, everybody. Steve here from Retired in Korea. Yeah, not much going on here in Korea. The doctor strike is still going on. For those people that are wondering about being retired in Korea, the wife and I, we sold everything in the United States and we hightailed it out and with a couple of suitcases, and boom, we retired early here in Korea. So yeah, that's what we ended up doing. So I do some videos on that, some other things, hobbies and whatever. But as you can tell by the title down here, we're going to talk a little bit about housing prices, the problems that we're seeing. It's peaking, and once things go high, the only place to go is low. And I think that's what we're going to see here pretty soon, especially with the condition of our country and everything. And housing prices is a problem which causes problems with rental pricing, which ever increases. And then there's also, for those of us that are a little bit older, getting close to Social Security insolvency. What are we going to do with that? And my recent work in progress in my hobby. So we figured we'd end on a more positive note since a lot of stuff is going bad. First thing we want to take a look at is rising home prices causes a lot of problems. And yeah, it's an enormous burden. This is very problematic because the rule of thumb used to be that you don't spend any more than 30% for your housing, whether you're buying a house, with a mortgage, or you're renting. 30% is kind of the rule of thumb, and then the rest of your percentages for food and medical and I don't know, Netflix and whatever else, your car note and everything else. But what we're seeing here is some very interesting information. It ends up that again, it talks about the rule of thumb here is no more than 30% of your income for housing. Redfin calculated that only 15.5% of homes last year would have a mortgage costing less than 30% of the local median income, a record well below the pre-pandemic norm. New report from Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Study found that in 2022, a record of half of U.S. renters were cost burdened. In other words, rental prices going through the roofs, spending more than 30% of their rent and utilities. About 27% of rent households spend more than half of their income on housing. This is very problematic, and especially if you're a senior. I'm going to be 58 this year. This causes problems when you're thinking about retiring, because a lot of people, the majority of people, don't ever pay off their house. And so for us, that was something that we ended up doing. Now, I heard lots of people complaining and telling me early on when I decided to throw money at my mortgage that people were like, no, you shouldn't do that. That's a waste. You should invest it. And then when the stock market crashed and everybody lost their shorts, where would you be? Here I was paying down my mortgage and, saving that equity, not doing a HELOC or anything like that. Paying down the house. And I went through ups and downs with the housing market. But eventually what we would do is we would buy a fixer-upper. We would fix it up. Of course, we bought it at a low price, below market price. Then we would wait and we would sell it. We would get the tax-free profit because we lived in the property more than 2 years, and then we would do it again and invest the profits into another house and put a bigger down payment upon that house. So that way our mortgage payments were lower, and we just continued doing that. And then we also threw money at our mortgage to eventually where we paid off our house. Lots of people said I was stupid for doing that it wasn't smart. It wasn't financially savvy. And yet I was able to retire early. It's a simple thing. Yes, on math, it looks, because the whole thing was, well, your mortgage interest rate is 3.14%. It's stupid to pay off your house, your mortgage, because you can invest that and make 6, 7, 8, 10%. And I always ask these people, well, where can I get this magical 7 to 10% return? And nobody is ever able to show me where these things are, and especially with the volatile market that we're in, it can be up, which is great, but you don't realize a profit until you sell. It's great. How many people did we see in the recent crashes that we had, even the housing crash in 2008, where people are looking at their portfolios. They're putting their pinky out. Look at my portfolio. Look at how big it is. The massive girth of my portfolio. And the next thing you know, the market crashed, and people that were getting ready retired lost 30, 40, 50, 60% of their retirement fund and their portfolios. It got to the place where many people that were looking to be retired couldn't retire and had to work, and basically they were put decades behind. Some people found that they were never going to be able to retire. So forgive me for being cautious, but paying off our mortgage was probably one of the better decisions that we did. Now, yeah, we could have put more money into regular investments and to realize that part of retirement, but we felt that it was more important to pay off our house because it is the largest expense that you're going to have. And once you pay off the house, well, yeah, you still got utilities and property tax and crazy property tax. If you pay off something, it should be yours. You shouldn't be taxed on it. But that's a whole nother rant. Anyway, it ends up that, when you keep paying down the mortgage, and especially with what we did with selling a property, taking that property or taking that profit and investing it into another property and doing the same thing, and eventually we just kept moving up and moving up, reducing the mortgage that we would have on a property and increasing the amount of equity or increasing the amount of the down payment that we would put onto the next property really helped us in the long run. Excuse me. So, in other words, and we'll go over some other information here, but this is very problematic because, there's a lot more. Now, this is from 2022. It's 2024, and renter households are spending more than half their income, and it's a lot more than 27%. If you look at the housing trends and rentals and so on and so forth, it is going through the roof. Now, some places are better than others. Some places are worse than others. But overall, it's not really good. And when you have big multinational corporations that are buying up single-family homes or even trailer parks or apartment buildings and things like that, and bringing all of these rentals into their portfolio because rents are continuing to go high and people need to live somewhere, you're going to have to pay. And that's kind of a thing. So the majority of people are going to pay more than 30% of what they make for housing. And now it's become a general acceptance that, 30, 40, 50% is okay as long as you can pay the mortgage. And now what we're seeing in some places that you will have multiple families or multiple people living in a single unit in a single family home, especially in places like California, Hawaii, things like that. We came from, we spent a year on Oahu, and there are real estate prices and rental prices are crazy. So you will see a big influx of where you will have a single family home and they'll rent out every single room in that property, and then you have the joint communal kitchen and so on and so forth. So you'll have multiple generations of family members living in one house, trying to pay the mortgage, trying to pay the rent. And real estate in Hawaii is just insane. But we're seeing similar trends in the United States as well. And it keeps going up. Housing prices keeps going up. Of course, now we have inflation that inflates prices and the cost of housing and so on and so forth. And it's just, and then there's the interest rates. We're at 6.5, 6.75%. My mortgage, the last mortgage that we had, isn't that nice to say? The last mortgage that we had, that we paid it down to 3.14%. And with the amount of down payment that we had, it really, our payment was, what was it? It was about $900-ish, somewhere around there, high 800s, low 900s. It's been so long since we had a mortgage. It was really great for us because the less we spent on our housing, that meant the more money that we could save and use for other things. So, and eventually when we paid off our mortgage, which a lot of people don't do, but if you use the strategy that we did, yeah, it's a pain in the ass to move into a broken house, the worst house on the block, and fix it up over time and then sell it, 2 or 3 years later, move and do it again and again and again. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, but it's part of the steps that were required for us to hit our goal to pay off a mortgage. And then once we paid off the mortgage, and thankfully, because the market was at a high, we were able to sell our house and we had tax-free profits from the sale of that property. And that allowed us to be able to help us retire overseas on top of pensions and other stuff. But this is house price index is near a record high. America built fewer homes in recent years. Home construction crashed before the 2008 mortgage crisis when they were giving loans to everybody and everybody. We're seeing similar things now as we did back then before the 2008 crash with the subprime loans. And if you could breathe, you could get a mortgage. And that's when we did our real estate investing with family. That went horribly bad, and family members defrauded the company, and left us in a lurch. And it was the saying, "Don't do business with family." I disregarded that, unfortunately. And even though we had contracts, even though we had business plans, and even though you would think we had this plan that would make us multimillionaires if we just followed the plan for 10, 15 years, 20 years. 15 years. We would, in other words, we would buy bank-owned properties, we would fix them up, rent them out, pay ourselves through kind of like a construction loan or a rehab loan, pay ourselves to fix up the property in about 1 or 2 months, and then we turn around and rent it out, and we get about $150 profit, and then on top of that, we'd probably get about $100 more, and we would take that and throw that onto the mortgage of that property. So in other words, we put about 100 to 150 extra to the principal of that mortgage every single month. That would kind of accelerate paying off that process. And once you pay off that house, and then boom, we have another house and another house and another house all doing the same thing. And so the lowest priced house, once it got paid off, then we would apply that to the next house, and then we'd split that up, or split up the money into the number of other houses that we had. And in 15 years, we would have had 30 or 40 paid off houses, rental properties, which would have made us multimillionaires. And then if we did an exchange and exchanged those houses for apartment buildings or whatever, we really, and paid that off, that would have been a cash cow. But instead, the family ended up defrauding the people, my parents, ended up defrauding the company, cooking the books. And by the time it was like, wait a second, this isn't making sense. Long story short, my wife and I, we found out that my parents, my mom and my stepdad, were cooking the books, and they were taking trips to Alaska and Oregon and a bunch of other places in Mexico. And the company was going down the tubes. They even... There was a huge storm that came into Pueblo, Colorado, where we lived. Destroyed a bunch of the roofs, so you file a claim to get new roofs, which isn't a bad thing because you get a new roof, boom, you're good to go. My parents spent that money. And then the roofer that did all the property's roofs took us to court, and I ended up in a lawsuit. And that's about the same time that I found out that my parents were cooking the books and misreporting because they wanted the easy money instead of doing the plan. Yeah, it went south so terribly wrong. It was unbelievable. Talk about being bent over and throw sand and just dry hump you to death. It's even despite that. And I was personally responsible for another number of loans, and so were some other family members. But, I'm still owed like $80,000 to $100,000 from the company, which will never happen. My stepdad passed away. There's bankruptcy, foreclosures. There were properties that tenants hadn't been paying that my parents have been stating that, oh yeah, they're paying on time, hadn't paid for months on and almost a year plus. People that shouldn't have been tenants in the property, but I don't know what the deal was, but yeah, it just ended horribly. So despite that, we were still seeing housing going up, and we were still experiencing the rent prices going up. And we figured that into our plan as well because we're looking at the trends and saying, okay, here we go. And then next thing you know, the mortgage industry failed, and with all the loans and hell, even you didn't even have to work. If you could breathe and sign, and fill out some paperwork, you could get a mortgage. That's what we're seeing again today, especially when we're starting to see that immigrants that are in the United States not legally, in other words, undocumented people are being given loans for mortgages, and we're following the same stupidity, and that's what we're going to end up seeing again. So yeah, there's not a lot of home building. It says it's rebounding. The median age of first-time home buyer, excuse me, the median age of first-time home buyers is a record high of age 35. So yeah, for a lot of people that are younger, the younger generations aren't going to buy houses, especially people that are turning 20 right now. We're at a high. That's going to come down. That's going to crash. We're going to see another crash, and I'm not sure when it's going to crash, but it's just getting to the point of where it's going to get ugly. So yeah, with the increase with housing, with house prices, and then also the interest rates, and because the interest rates are high, this is going to result in more people renting. Because if you can't buy a house, you still have to live somewhere. And even though there's a lot of tent cities in a lot of places in the United States, the majority of people are going to rent. And that's what we end up seeing here is that, housing for rents rising trigger increase in people without stable housing. So this talks about shelters and low supply lets landlords jack up rents. It prevents people from leaving abusive partners. It forces California college students to sleep in their cars. Housing shortage is really real, blah, blah, blah. We're seeing all this stuff. But basically what it comes down to is these rising prices and high interest rates is going to have an effect. And things go up and things go down, and you build wealth and you lose wealth, and it depends on when you get out of the market. So anyway, I kind of wanted to give an example. So for example, here we have a property. So on, where is it? This side? What is it? This side? No, it's the other side. This side. This side is a property of $388,000 with a down payment of $20,000, and you can end up at a 3.14%. And basically, what you end up seeing is $2157.78 as far as the mortgage payment with primary mortgage insurance. Ours was lower. I couldn't remember how much our down payment that we put down, but it was able to get us to a point of where $388,000 or whatever the price of the property was enough to get it down to like the high 800s, like 890 or something like that, somewhere around 900. But this is if the difference of the interest rates is 3.14%, and then over here on the other side you have the same house, the exact same house, and it's now valued at $475,000. Again, 20% or $20,000 down and a 6.75% interest rate, and now you're looking at $36.65. So that is a huge difference in what you can pay, and depending on how much money you're making in your income, you might not be able to have a house and afford a house. So this is where we're getting to at a point in the United States where we're seeing people that can't afford housing because housing is going up. They can't afford the payments, so they're going past that 30% rule. And people like us, like seniors, are looking at this and saying, if this trend continues, And we're not even talking about the expenses, like property tax goes up every single year. We're talking about utilities that are going up. We have inflation. We have the recession that we're in that strangely nobody is ever talking about. I think it's because we're coming up on an election. And the current administration doesn't want even to admit that we're in a recession, even though prices of housing is like 30-40%. Prices of groceries and things like that have gone up, 20, 30, 40% on items. It just baffles the mind. And yet the current administration is saying, look how successful we are. Look how many jobs we've had. Well, if you took away a bunch of jobs from, the economy because of COVID, and now those people are working back in those jobs, you didn't create those jobs. Those were previous jobs that you actually destroyed, and now people are going back to work, and you're saying that's because you did this. No, that's not. That's not creating new jobs. That's the market getting back to normalcy and people going back to work at jobs that you took away because of stupid government intervention and COVID, and don't even get me started on that. So yeah, it's very problematic, especially for seniors. We're getting to this place of where Social Security is going to be infected or going to be affected because it's going to become insolvent pretty soon. But before we even look at that, let's take a look at this USAFacts.org. Nearly half American households have no retirement savings. And this is from November 9th, 2023. And yeah, that's almost half of American households have no savings in retirement accounts, according to the CFC or SCF. These accounts include individual retirement accounts, COIG, employee-sponsored accounts such as 401k, 401(k), thrift savings plans, and pensions. That pretty much covers everything, except for the people that are like using some money to buy some silver and gold coins and hoping that they will be able to retire. Yeah, it's, those precious metals holds wealth, but yeah, it's probably, yeah, it's very problematic. So, yeah. In 2022, about 46% of households reported any savings in retirement accounts. 26% had saved more than 100,000, and 9% had more than 500,000. These are only somewhat higher for older people. The ages 50 to 54 were most likely to have a retirement account. About 63% in this age group had savings, and 35% had more than $100,000. Yeah, so I've talked about this in the past about seniors and articles and surveys that talk about how seniors who are getting ready to retire or should be getting ready to retire, in other words, are going to be hitting 62 when they can draw the earliest draw of their Social Security, or 65 or 67. They don't have a paid off house. They're renting because, there's people that have never bought a house in their life and they just rented their entire lives, which is fine because you don't have to deal with the maintenance, and yeah, I get it, and all that stuff. But when you get close to retirement, and if you're some of these people that don't have anything saved and you just spent everything that you had, you're not going to be able to retire. And a number of the articles that I referenced in surveys before in the past talked about, with 30, 40, 50% of seniors are looking at saying, hey, I'm never going to be able to retire. A number of seniors, 3/4 of them in another one said that, hey, they're going to be working into their 70s, which there's nothing wrong with working into your 70s if you enjoy it. If you enjoy it, then it's not really work. But you're still being able to save and invest and fund to eventually to a point of where you should retire and enjoy the fruits of your labor. We're not seeing this. And so with all of this, if you don't have this, then really the only thing that you have left is Social Security. Social Security is, it's just not really. this, that's a teaser of what's to come, because we're going to end on a lighter note. But with Social Security, a lot of people are banking on Social Security, and I've seen tons of people post on social media, the little pics and the memes talking about, well, that's my money. If I took out my Social Security and I invested it in a conservative account, I would have $1 million instead of the paltry sum that I'm going to get when I hit 62 or 65, 67 or whatever. That's my money. No, it's not your money. and I want to give you an example of this. First Social Security recipient, and I think her name was Ida May. Yes, her name was Ida Mae Fuller, and we're going to take a look at this real quick here. Ida Mae Fuller was the first beneficiary of reoccurring monthly Social Security payments. She was known as Aunt Ida to her friends and family. She was born on September 1874 on a farm outside Ludlow, Vermont. And basically what had ended up happening is that she paid let me see, here it is. She was like the first person to get Social Security. Her monthly check was issued in the amount of $22.54. Miss Fuller, a legal secretary, retired in November 39. She started collecting benefits in 1940 at age 65 and lived to be 100 years old, dying in 1975. She worked 3 years under the Social Security program and accumulated taxes on her salary during those 3 years was a total of $24.75. Wow. Her initial monthly check was $22.54. During her lifetime, she collected more than $22,888.92 in Social Security benefits. So what we end up seeing is that, she didn't work her entire life and put money into her Social Security account that accrued interest like an investment in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or even a savings account with, a paltry interest rate. She paid for 3 years into Social Security, and then suddenly she lived for, a long, long time. And she got a monthly check of $22.54, her initial monthly check. And during a lifetime, she collected over, almost 23 grand. So where did that money come from? Social Security is kind of like a Ponzi scheme. So in other words, the people that are on Social Security now, the people that are working are paying the Social Security checks of the people who are retired now in Social Security. So the working people are paying for the people that are drawing Social Security now. So in other words, your money is not going into a Social Security account and building interest and so on and so forth. And we're not even going to talk about politicians who took money out of the Social Security fund, which would cause problems later on down the line because it was never paid back, which is coming up in a number of years, 9, 10, 13 years, somewhere around there. I've heard different stories, and we'll actually take a look at that. But your Social Security is not your Social Security account. It's not like a savings account where you put money in and interest accrues and you look at it and say, oh, I'm going to be set when I retire. No. It's based off of how many quarters you work, and the people that are paying Social Security tax now those are the people that are funding the people who are on Social Security. There's a problem with this, and I saw this a long time ago, that eventually the demographic is going to change where you're going to have a bunch of older people getting Social Security, but you're not going to have as many people in the workforce. So there's going to be a problem with Social Security, and this is what we end up seeing. So here we have it. Social Security funds barreling toward insolvency without a fix just yet. If Congress does nothing, Social Security recipients would see benefit cut of 21%. I think the last article that I saw said it was like 17%. So anywhere from 15 to 20% somewhere. So we'll take a look at this. It's headed towards depletion. Without a fix from Congress, retirees will see steep payment cuts in less than a decade. It's not good. Whoa, internet's gone crazy here. Okay. The annual Social Security Trustees reports that old age survivors and insurance trust fund is on track to reach insolvency by 2033, at which point benefits would be cut by 20.
Tremendous makes it easy for marketers to send Visa, PayPal, and gift cards at scale, saving you 15 hours a month in busy work.
So yeah, it's really interesting what we end up seeing here. It would require a change in law. The funds would be able to pay for the total scheduled benefits until 2035, but if the reforms are not implemented by that time, payees can expect, that's where that 17% came in, reduction in their checks. So let's see, 2024 minus, what was it, 2033, 2033, we get 9 years. So in 9 years, something's got to happen. And I don't think it's going to be this administration. I don't think it's going to be the next administration. I think this can is going to get kicked down the road a few more times before it's dealt with. Now, there's also a problem with Social Security because people say, well, hey, we're raising the minimum wage. Raising the minimum wage so people can have a living wage. Because people can't, they work multiple jobs. A single job cannot provide for housing and expenses and all the things that it takes to live, unfortunately. That's why another part of the housing crisis is because prices are so terribly high that people can't afford it. So they're staying home with their elderly parents. And yeah, that's not a fun thing at all. And then we're not even going to talk about how we have people that are in their 20s and 30s and 40s that are living with their parents who aren't working and just sitting in their basements playing video games or Minecraft or whatever. That's a whole nother social issue, and we're not going to deal with that. But yeah, this is very problematic. Now, the following release of the report, President Biden issued a statement saying he will keep strengthening Social Security and that he is committing to extending Social Security solvency by asking the highest income Americans to pay their fair share without cutting benefits or privatizing Social Security. That's not a plan. That right there is not a good plan, because you will have people, the highest earning Americans. So now you're going to penalize people who create businesses, who create jobs, that pays for health insurance for people, for pension and benefits and investing, in their employees and so on and so forth. Now you're going to penalize them by having them pay more taxes? That doesn't sound right. And of course, raising taxes is always a good thing, right? Yeah. We see more corruption and failure when the government takes over something and saying that, we don't want to privatize Social Security, because Lord forbid you put it into the hands of a competitive market to give you a better product. No, we don't want that. We want the American public feeding their lifeblood and tears so that the government can sit high on the hog. And then they will just drop out a few little crumbs from the table, and the dogs, the people, the lower class people that aren't politicians, who, by the way, are getting insanely rich during their times in office, which doesn't even make sense, because if you make $127,000 a year and your assets that you had prior to coming into your political office, you might have had a couple $100,000, and then after your first term, you're a multimillionaire. How does that even happen? Insider trading, which they can do, but we can't. I don't know. There needs to be term limits. Don't get me started. So anyway, the president accused congressional Republicans of wanting to cut Social Security and decrease the retirement age. The interesting thing is that the retirement age was based on the fact that people were only living a certain amount of time. And so they had Social Security planned according to that, kind of like averages. The problem is that we have better technology, we have better medical care, better medicines, we have better food, and we are living longer. I think besides the COVID fiasco, our life expectancy was at the highest. So now, if you're living longer, now the problem is that you're having to pay more money out of Social Security. So the people that are paying the Social Security tax, the problem is with this thing of saying that, he's committed to extending Social Security by asking the highest income Americans to pay their fair share, is very problematic because they can't pay enough to keep it solvent. There's no way. And if you do that, it's going to create resistance, and those people that were committed American citizens are going to go to other countries, and they're going to give up their citizenship if you're going to tax the shit out of them. Kind of reminds me back in the day of when people left one country because they were being taxed out the wazoo and went to other countries so that they could have a workable system. Oh yeah, when the U.S. left the UK, England, and revolted, and the tea thing where they threw tea into the harbor. There's kids that don't even know that today, which is insanely strange. This could go into so many different rants, education and so on and so forth. But if you don't teach people their rights or teach people that they can have rights, then it's easier to trample on their rights. We'll just leave it at that. But yeah, having the highest paid Americans pay their fair share to keep Social Security solvent that will never work. It's kind of like saying, the top 1% need to pay the highest tax so that way we can do this, this, and this, and this, to run the government or whatever. And you figured out if they took all of the money of all the top 1% in the United States, you couldn't even run the government for a long period of time. So there's no amount of taxes going to keep Social Security solvent by taxing the top 1%, the highest income earning Americans in the United States. And if it ever comes to this place, then those highest income Americans will simply leave America and they will denounce their citizenship. They will become citizens of other countries that have more amicable, tax things, and say, hey, you're getting taxed out the wazoo here in the United States. We will offer you reduced taxes if you live in our country, and we welcome you with open arms because we know that if you transfer your wealth and businesses and headquarters and so on and so forth, that you will save a shit ton of money. Then those Americans that are the highest income paying Americans are going to leave the United States, and then you won't get any money. It's kind of like what we're seeing in California, where California raising taxes, and that's why you see so many rich individuals that are leaving California because they don't like the taxes. And California actually came up to the place of where they're saying, well, we're going to, all the rich people are leaving. We got to make a law. And they were actually considering a law to retroactively, if you moved out of the state of California, that you would continue to have to pay California tax money. That is insane. That just shows you how bad of a system that they have, and that's what we end up seeing here is the exact same thing. Excuse me. With that being said, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm an independent. But when you have stuff like this where they say, oh, we're just going to tax the highest income Americans and that'll fix the problem, no, it won't. You do the math, and way smarter people than me have done the math and show that, yeah, this is an absolute shit show and it will never happen. Now, you'll end up like California. California is a microcosm of what our United States government is becoming because of all the liberal ideas and BS, and we're just printing money like it's going out of style. And so, if this is a problem, how come we can print billions and billions and billions of dollars for the Ukraine and we give millions and billions of dollars to countries that hate the United States? We just print the money out of thin air and give it to them, but we're going to tax our own citizens for Social Security to keep it solvent? That makes no sense. If you're printing money out of thin air and it's based off of nothing, in other words, the American dollar is a fiat money system, why don't we even pay taxes if you can just print it? But Social Security. Every single election year they talk about Social Security. Seniors aren't going to get paid, and that's what Republicans and Democrats they all cry the same thing. Mostly on the Democrat side, but some Republicans say it as well. Is that we're going to have to cut Social Security, and seniors are going to be at risk unless you vote for me. Blah blah blah. The problem is that it's terrible. If we can just print money and give it away to nations that hate us, why can't we just print money and make Social Security solvent? It makes absolutely no sense. So this house of cards that we built is going to crash, just like we've seen little examples throughout history of the United States where we have market crashes, boom, and housing crashes, boom, and subprime mortgage housing crashes, boom. And then we're doing it again. California is now saying that illegal immigrants or undocumented workers who are not citizens of the United States, who have no visas that allow them to long-term stay in the United States, are being allowed mortgages, and a lot of other states are doing this. We're setting ourselves up for another crash. And of course, what do we see before a crash? We're seeing higher interest rates. We're seeing, higher housing prices and higher rent prices, and everything is going through the roof. And people are like, we're going to get into this and we're going to make a ton of money. It's all going to crash. And it's all going to crash again. So it's, trying to say that, the current administration can fix Social Security by taxing wealthy citizens in the United States is kind of like saying, I don't know, going to a drug addict and a meth head and saying, hey, we're going to fix your problem, and we're going to fix your problem, and we're going to go to the dealer, and we're going to make the dealers give you more. It's insane. It's just a losing thing. The U.S. has an aging population of more 67 million people who receive Social Security benefits. The older the American is, the more likely they are to vote, so many politicians shy away from discussing reforms of the program at all. If no reforms are made, Americans who receive Social Security benefits now, those who rely on those benefits, which there's a ton of people that's their only income, a significant threat when it comes to 2033, which is about 9 years down the road. Recipients, they need to come together and work together. Yeah, that'll never happen. The Social Security Trustees report confirms it's no longer just future generations who should be concerned about receiving their full earned benefits, but rather current retirees as well. And because if there is no fix, you're going to lose 17 to 21% of your Social Security. And that's not even counting the inflation. That's not counting the recession that we have and so on and so forth, where your buying dollar is getting less than it was before. It is actually insane. We no longer have a Social Security that is on a sustainable financial path. I've been saying this for decades. And people before me, smarter than me, have been saying this as well. And all of this is really interesting. And it's interesting how it's like, undocumented workers, we need to pay them, and they're being paid out of money that's from somewhere. You get undocumented workers that are here in the United States illegally that aren't on a long-term visa, haven't been approved for a visa, haven't had background checks. They're getting more money than Social Security recipients. So where's this money coming from? I don't understand why Social Security isn't in the threat that it is of being insolvent. If we have money to just give to other countries and give to undocumented workers who've never done a background check, don't have a legal visa to stay in the United States, I don't see why this is a problem. Because it's a tool to kind of divide America and to divide people into certain groups in the United States, whether it's Republican, Democrat, or whatever. It's about division. The way to fix this would be if you had let's get rid of the IRS, have a flat tax so that everybody pays their fair share. So if you're a multimillionaire and you buy a Tesla, guess what? You're going to pay a flat tax the same as a middle-class American that would buy a Tesla. I would never buy a Tesla because that's a losing battle right there. That's a whole nother video. We don't have the infrastructure, mines. Let's not mine coal and petroleum but let's mine for nickel, cadmium, and 4 or 5 other things, and open up all those mines, which are even worse for the environment. Excuse me, even worse for the environment than digging for just gas and oil. Yeah, we could go down some very steep roads. But yeah, now this is it's all part of it's our job as Americans and the voting public to ensure that we demand President Biden and present us with realistic, detailed plan to avert trust fund insolvency. We need to work with Congress to implement a plan. Time is running out. This is just another thing that's they're going to kick this can down the road. And like the current administration that says that they want to tax the highest earning income Americans to fix the solvency, the math doesn't work out. So yeah, it's like you're talking to a drug addict. Well, if you just give me more drugs, it'll make everything all right. Yeah, it's just not how it works. Yeah, the Social Security thing and all that is just terribly, terribly bad. So with all of this, what we end up seeing is more and more seniors that are currently getting Social Security, and they're seeing this stuff and seeing that in 9, 10 years, if this isn't fixed, we're going to have some problems living. Because if I lose, there's a number of seniors who are on Social Security that are living in Section 8 housing, that are living in, reduced, or Section 8 is kind of reduced housing. You get vouchers from the government and so on and so forth because their income is so low. But with that, they're going to be priced out of the market for rent because it's going to go bad. And so they're looking at overseas retirement as a way to survive and live and not have to deal with the bullshit that we have in the United States. So it's like you have your expenses, it's going to go down. My costs are going to, my income's going to be reduced 17 to 20%, somewhere around there, if this doesn't get fixed. If it doesn't get fixed, plan for the worst, hope for the best. Where can I go to retire that will minimize my expenses, living expenses, so that I can actually retire? And that's overseas. Whether it's Philippines, whether it's Portugal, places in Europe, Asia, whatever it is, South America, there's a number of places where expenses are half or less than half, three-quarters less. Of course, there's always some, less expenses, but it might not be as nice as in the United States of what you're used to now. But people are making those hard choices and saying, hey, if I stay in the United States, I'm not going to be able to live and survive. You have people that are on Social Security that are homeless. And they're homeless because they can't afford rent. So, you have people that are like, hey, I can't make it. I'm living in a car. I'm living in a van down by the beach, by the river. If you get that Chris Farley joke, gold star to you. But, these people are realizing if I can just get to a foreign country that is friendly to expats, that where my income from Social Security will allow me to have a long-term visa to stay in that country, and I can actually live and maybe even save 50 or $100 a month, versus staying in the United States and stealing toilet paper and condiment packets out of, fast food places to help supplement. You have dumpster divers that it's a thing in the United States because seniors cannot make it on their own. So, yeah, do I want to keep dumpster diving for my food, or would I rather go to a foreign country where the standards might be a little bit lower, but I can actually live in my own place and maybe save $100 and or $50 a month after my expenses? Yeah, that's an easy choice. Just saying. There are some options out there. With that being said, let's take a look at my recent work in progress. And for those of you who don't know, I do some miniature painting. Let me see if I can get this to focus in. So, will it focus? Maybe. So, maybe not as well. But that's where the video comes into play. So anyway, that's my recent work in progress. So I've done a little bit of hobby stuff, and to get, let me see if we can get some pictures up here and show you what I'm talking about. So there is, now this little miniature is maybe, I don't know, how tall is that? I'm wondering how tall it is. And this is approximately 3.5 inches tall. So this little guy here is 3.5 inches tall. It's a resin printed miniature figure, and yeah, it's got some kind of cool effects that I'm learning to do. Whoa, that picture's big. So you can see I ended up doing the muzzle flash, and we've got some of the flash reflecting off of the rifle, which is kind of cool. That turned out really well. See if we can get a back shot there. So there's one of the back, a lot more details. I still need to do the black around the base. I'm not finished with this yet. And there's some more. So yeah, it's a cool little project, cool little hobby thing that we got going on. And I really enjoy it. And, oh, that picture's huge. Let me go back and see if we can. But you can see some of the details there on some of the glow, and I've even done some more stuff. But yeah, the details on this turned out really well, and there's still areas and things that I can improve on, obviously, from which is crazy. If you look at different pictures of what people do of painting miniatures, it's insane. Mine, it looks nice. But there's stuff out there that I'm just like, it's incredibly well done. And this is just insane what we end up seeing. So yeah, that's what we end up seeing. So yeah, it's great to retire overseas and what we end up seeing. And suddenly my face has gotten very dark. So what happened? Let's see if we can increase there we go. So you can actually see me. That's better. But yeah, that's what we got going on. Being retired in Korea, you're going to see more and more people retiring overseas. And that's because of the housing prices. That's because of the Social Security that they're getting. I'm 58. I still got a few years. I'm going to draw my Social Security at 62 because I can afford to do that. And I've got other income coming in. So it's like, hey, that's going to be like an extra, $1,000 a month or whatever. So yeah, it is what it is. But even then, so 58, 59, 61, 62, so 4 years, I've got 4 years and I can draw. And then I've got 5 years until we hit 2033, and then supposedly Social Security will be insolvent. And, but yeah, the government wants to tax you to keep it solvent, or they want to tax. Now, here's the thing is that there's no amount of money that the highest income Americans can be taxed, because they're already getting taxed at like 30 and 40%, and you want to tax them more? Social Security comes out of everybody's checks. I don't think people realize how far the rabbit hole goes when it comes to Social Security, but this is just going to be insane. And yeah, people are going to look for different places to retire. And I was able to retire early because of what we did with houses, buying a broken house, fix it up, live in it for 2 years. And then when we sell it, when the market is high, we're able to make a profit and then repeat doing that process and paying down the house. And that allowed us to eventually pay off our final house. Into where we retired and came to Korea, we were able to buy an apartment free and clear. And we still have money left over, which is another part of something that is really interesting, is that generally housing prices overseas is less than what we see in the United States. it's kind of like people leaving California, selling their multi-million-dollar properties, for $1 or $2 million. That was like maybe a 2-bedroom house or whatever, and then they go to Texas or Colorado or other places where real estate isn't insanely high, and they can get a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom 2-bath with 5-piece master bath and bullnose corners, oversized garage, for $400,000 or $600,000, and they're like, this is insane. We would never, this would cost 20 million in California where we were. It's kind of the same thing. You can pay off your house in the United States and you sell when the market is high, and then you go overseas and you're finding out like this place here it's great. 4-bedroom, 2-bath, underground parking, semi-private elevator. In other words, we have an elevator that goes up to our floor, and there's one unit and then our unit. So it's not like you'd have a bunch of different units, at least in the place where we live. But yeah, we still have money left over, and to keep us very comfortable. And then that allows me to do work on miniatures and painting and hobbies, and for us to go to coffee shops and travel and do some stuff. As opposed to in the United States, we actually looked at housing because we had our mortgage paid off, and we're like, hey, if we sell and we had been in the house for more than 2 years, we can make tax-free profit. So our idea was, well, what we should do is we should downsize from the big, basically 4,000 square foot house that we had, and let's buy just like a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. No, you can't do that. It was insane the amount of money that it would cost us to buy even a fixer-upper, and it would deplete our funds. In other words, you couldn't downsize to save money. That's how fast and how much everything is going up in price in regards to housing. So, eventually this led to some pretty startling revelations to saying, well, now I got to move to some place where housing is inexpensive. So is that down south? As we, do all this, we're considering that. But it was like, even then, you're still stuck with this dilemma of buying a place, and usually with lower priced houses, you're going to have, not so good neighborhoods. That's not always the case, but generally that's what you see. But overseas, housing isn't that expensive. Property taxes isn't that expensive. For our 4-bedroom, 2-bath here in Korea that we bought, well, let's back up. The 4,000 square foot house that we had in the United States, our property tax was coming close to, right now it's about $2,400 a year. When we originally bought it, I think it was like $1,400. It would go up like $100 every month or more. Just terribly insane how it would go up every single year. It didn't go up every month. It would go up every year, and then you're paying more every month is what I wanted to say. So yeah, you're looking at $2,400 for property tax every year on a property. And with this property, that was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 5-piece master bath and all that. Now we have a 4-bedroom, 2-bath here in Korea that we paid off, and our property tax is $250 a year. Well, it depends on the exchange rate, $230 to $250 a year. And it doesn't go up as much every year as it does in the United States. So it pretty much, property tax hasn't gone runaway crazy like it does in the United States, where people say, oh, we're going to, if you pay off your house, you shouldn't have to pay for property tax. There should be no property tax either anyway. It just isn't a thing. Now, maybe if you're mortgaging the property, and maybe there should be some money that you have to pay because you're mortgaging the property. I understand that. But property tax shouldn't be a thing. I don't think, personally, in my own opinion. But with that being said, if you have to deal with the cards that you've been dealt, go play another game. Leave that table and go somewhere else where the odds are more in your favor, or not as expensive as what they were at this table over here. And that's why people are retiring overseas. So, yeah. Now I'll grant you that retiring in Korea is not something that a lot of people will do. It's not a retirement-friendly place like Philippines or Thailand or Bali or, Portugal or places in South America, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, so on and so forth. but it's cheaper expenses, and that's what it comes down to. And for a lot of people, that's what it's. That straw is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, is the amount of income that they're getting from Social Security and the expenses that they have. And when they get to a point of where they say, well, either I'm going to have to work until I die because I can't afford to live on Social Security alone, you're never, in other words, you're never going to really retire, versus maybe go overseas and retire in a place where my Social Security can allow me to retire and live, and I can actually save 50 or $100 or whatever it is. Yeah, maybe that's what I should do. Maybe. Because I don't see expenses going down. I see a market crash in the United States, and especially, I think we're going to see the market crash first in California when you give undocumented workers loans for housing based off of nothing, just disregarding all credit risk standards that we have, which you think would not happen because of the mortgage crash that we had in 2008 and other things in the past. California hasn't learned its lesson, and the United States hasn't learned its lesson as a whole, unfortunately. Now, there are individual states that are doing really good and have more conservative values and thinking and actually base things on common sense. But again, overall, it's very hard. And it's crazy that undocumented workers get more money than people on Social Security. But now Social Security is going to go insolvent. I don't understand. And we're giving billions and billions of dollars away to Ukraine, and we actually give billions of dollars away to countries that actually hate the United States, and yet we send them money. I don't know. Maybe it's hush money. Maybe it's, we're trying to bribe them into not doing stupid. It's kind of like, what was it, California or New York, that was actually suggesting that they pay money to criminals to not commit crimes. Talk about idiocracy. In case you didn't know, Idiocracy was a comedy, and it's slowly become a documentary. And then there was what was this? Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes. It was set in the future. Demolition Man, and where you have this wussified society, and it's, check that out. We're getting to that stage as well. So a combination of Idiocracy and Demolition Man, as far as the society and where we're heading, that's where we're heading. And when you see the videos of people, that don't know the capital of the United States, that don't know, I mean, just basic information, how many states are in the United States? Kids today don't even know this. People in their 20s don't even know how many states are in the United States. And the amount of lack of knowledge and this ever decreasing scores in math, science, and education, so on and so forth, it's just going to get worse in the United States. And when you have politicians that end up saying, oh, we're just going to tax the wealthy people, you're just going to drive the wealthy people away. And we see that in California as an example, that wealthy people in California, actors and businessmen and so on and so forth, people like Elon Musk that said, sayonara, see ya, we're going to Texas, because it's better there than what it was in California. You're going to see this. There's already been a mass exodus, but you're going to see even more. And unfortunately, what we see, whatever California does, that's what the nation does. And if that's what we see, then you need to take an active look or a concerted effort to look at, if you're going to stay in the United States and retire. Most people won't be able to retire because you see most people don't have retirement savings, so they're going to rely on Social Security. Social Security doesn't even keep up with the cost of living. Kind of like, all the politicians want to increase, minimum wage, but they don't want to increase Social Security like the increase for minimum wage so people can live. It seems like Social Security is always that one thing that politicians use to beat the populace to death is saying, oh, you need to vote for me because Social Security is going to run out. But they print money out of thin air and use it for tons of other stuff. I don't know. It's just very, very problematic. So anyway, I know this has been a long video and it's been painfully long, but yeah, it is what it is. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of go over a few things and being retired in Korea. And honestly, at times I wish I could have stayed in the United States, but on the other hand, I'm glad I retired overseas because that allowed me to retire early. So. And yeah, just kind of looking from the outside in back to the United States, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I don't think it's going to get better. You know, when you have now, you look at the riots going on in colleges, nobody wants to prosecute criminals anymore. You know, you've got people that commit crimes against children and raping and baby rapers, and they get less time than people who commit murder. It's just, justice denied is going to be huge, and it's going to have its repercussions. You know, when you don't prosecute criminals, it's across the board. It's just going to get worse, and that's what we're seeing is this ever expanding mentality of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and everybody, no borders, and it's like, yeah, that's a dangerous thing. And combined with the stupidity that a lot of politicians have, yeah, it's going to get even worse, exponentially so over time. So anyway, that's it. Put in your comments in the comment section down below on what you think. Overseas retirement, housing, Social Security. What are your thoughts on Social Security or all the things that we talked about? And even what are your hobbies? Might not be painting little dudes like this. Maybe it's hiking or doing stuff, whatever, I don't know. But what are your hobbies and what do you like to do to keep your mind off the bullshit that is going on in America today? I'd like to hear that. Whether it's a sport, a hobby, just whatever it is to get you out of the BS that we face every single day. And yeah, I'd like to know what that is. So anyway, put that in the comment section down below and we'll take a read and see what you like to do. And yeah, maybe it'll spur people on to pick up some new hobbies and get away from the craziness that we have in this world today. All right, we'll see you again. Peace. Crazy.